Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Austin Moser. I'm the Director of Development here at the James Madison Institute. Certainly appreciate taking your time out of your morning for this. Just a few housekeeping items. If you could go ahead and mute yourself, and then also close any extra browsers you may have. It'll help with the connectivity. Also, we're going to do some participant Q&A later in the program. So if you have any questions, you go ahead and enter them in the chat. Today we have two representatives joining us. Currently serving on the Judiciary Committee and several subcommittees. We have joining us from District 93 is Representative Chip LaMarca. His district covers the coastal portion of Broward County and includes Hillsborough Beach, Lighthouse Point, and Lauderdale by the Sea. We also have joining us is Representative Toby Overdorf. Representative Overdorf has been a resident of the Treasure Coast for the last 20 years and represents District 83, which covers Jensen Beach, Stewart, and Palm City. We also have some JMI staff members on this call. Dr. Bob McClure, our CEO and President, Logan Padgett, our Director of Communications, and Sal Nuzzo, our Vice President of Policy. Now I'll turn it over to Dr. McClure for a few words.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you all for joining us today. We're grateful that you've taken time out of your day to be with us here. Most of you on this call, or many of you on this call, are from the southeastern portion of the state, but I also know we have people from all over the state. Indeed, we have some folks from all over the country and even in Canada. So thank you all again for being here. You know, as we say often here at the James Madison Institute, Florida really is kind of ground zero when it comes to policy and politics. You look at our state, you look at the demographics, you look at the continued growth, you look at the fact that we're Florida, its own world's economy. It'd be about the 17th or 18th largest economy in the world. You look at the dynamism of our school-age children, whatever demographic that you choose to slice out or carve out, it's here in the state of Florida. And so what happens here on a policy level and on a political level has national implications. And so we're grateful to have these two representatives with us here today, because I do think for more than a generation now, our state has been governed by leaders who believe in freedom. We also like to say here at JMI that freedom works every time it's tried. And when you think of that, it's the rule of law, it's the protection of private property, it's those kinds of things that advance liberty that work every time they're tried. And you look at the state of Florida, you pick any index, best place to start a business, best place to retire, best place to do X, Y, or Z, and Florida invariably is in the top 3, 4, or 5 in those indices. And so we're very fortunate today to have terrific leadership. These two representatives are going to share with us kind of what they're seeing and what they're thinking. I want to thank our supporters for the James Madison Institute. Obviously, we are donor-driven, and we're grateful for your generosity and your support. We hope you will continue to do that. If you're not on the team with JMI just yet, we'd love for you to support us, and you can learn more at jamesmadison.org. And so thank you again for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started with the program. I'd like to start with Representative LaMarca, but both of you obviously chime in. How has this coronavirus situation impacted your district as you see things in the past, currently, and moving forward into the future?
Well, thank you, Dr. McClure, and it's a pleasure to be here on this with one of the people I consider to be a colleague and one of the brightest members of the Florida House, Representative Overdorf. I say that honestly. We had some great legislation the first 2 years, but with respect to your question, you know, the issue of coronavirus, the COVID-19 issues that we've been dealing with, especially here in Broward, and a population of nearly 2 million people and quite a few visitors that are, you know, less now, but still a lot of activity here, and dealing with, you know, legislative issues, or I would call it constituent services, which is where I came from as a former county commissioner and city commissioner, is you're on the ground. It's a little less of the Tallahassee being a long way place where you don't have that contact with your constituents. And thanks to my amazing staff, Samantha Werner and Corey Sinisa, we've been able to really kind of dig in and be another level of a call center for DEO, unemployment, driver's license appointments, trying our best to work with the governor's office and different agencies to extend back when it was first started, property tax filings here in Broward County, some corporate filings and other things like that, and just trying to lessen the impact of what the shutdown caused. But really, as we come out of it, we're just as busy trying to get people acclimated to what, what the economy looks like now. And, proud to say that we're, as a state, we're coming back, but we took quite a hit. So we're all stewards of Florida's economy and Florida's tourism industry. So as I say to everybody, we're all ambassadors for the success of Florida.
Representative Overdorf, how are things in your district as it relates to the coronavirus?
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for having me on today. It's obviously a pleasure to be here and a pleasure also to serve with Chip. He and I were suite mates, and when he and I weren't yelling at each other across the walls, our aides were. So it was certainly some camaraderie that happened up there. We look forward to this next year, we hope. That being said, this year when the virus hit, we went into, as Chip said, constituent services mode. And helping people with unemployment. Our office helped over 400 different applicants get through the process with unemployment. We also helped with getting emergency gear here as well, and working with the emergency management department and getting that. We worked with our hospitals to really look at what the bed level was and what our occupancy levels were. We were also looking at elder housing, and we have a fair amount of assisted living facilities that are here. So I worked with a couple of folks that own those assisted living facilities to really ensure the safety of the residents there, and to find ways that we can continue to interact, because as you can imagine, the isolation that's there was really difficult. So for those patients that were there to make sure that they're taken care of. The other side of this also was, as we not only emerge out of this, but also looking at some other things. A positive thing that I found that came out of this, frankly, was our family time. My daughter and her boyfriend live in Miami, and everything was shut down in Miami. They came up, and he worked literally on one side of the desk in my office. I worked on the other side of the desk, and my daughter was home. It was actually a good thing in that family was together. We made some amazing meals together. So from that perspective, it was a positive. Then on the negative side, of course, is our economy. And I really, as Chip alluded to, we're starting to emerge from that. We're also seeing a completely different way of doing campaigns now, whether it be virtual, whether it be phone calls. I'm sure you're getting text messages and things like that, and so making sure that we're getting those touches. Frankly, up here in Martin and St. Lucie counties, we've been doing a lot more walking now. And I got to tell you, the reception's been amazing for people. And they've liked to see another person out there. I can count on my hand the number of times we've had a negative. So that's kind of how things have changed, and how it's impacted our office. And of course, I talk to people about handshaking now, and it's kind of like that first kiss. You're not really sure what you're supposed to be doing. You extend the hand, or you extend the arm, or is it an elbow, or is it a fist? And you're not really sure. So we'll work through that and get those cordials down. But that's kind of how it's been.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we'll get through that. I understand what you're talking about there. I'd like to turn it over to Logan and Sal. Sal is our Vice President for Policy here at the James Madison Institute, and Logan Padgett is our Director of Communications and Public Affairs.
Thanks, Bob. Sal and I are going to tag team the next few questions. I wanted to open up a question for both of you. I'll start with Rep. Overdorf first. You each just completed your first term in the House. Apart from the craziness of 2020, what surprised you most about your first 2 years as a freshman legislator?
Logan, thank you for that question. The reality is that, I found that what was amazing to me was you hear about how things are so dysfunctional, and you hear about how things are so fractioned and divided. And when you got to the Florida House, there was a lot of really working together towards various goals. Are we going to split on some party lines? Absolutely we are. There's no doubt about it. But a lot of the items that we worked for really helped to better Florida. I can't believe how many intelligent people are within that area up there and all the different items that are associated with it. And also working with a variety of the people that are up there. It really is amazing how it all works. I mean, you've got incredible staff members that are there that help you with writing these bills and putting those together. You've got great legislative aides that pretty much do so much for us. And then literally this train of lobbyists and people and interests that are coming up to you. That fire hose really never stopped from when I started up there, and we're still drinking and still learning and that whole process. So I think what surprised me, I'm thinking I'm going up there and I'm somewhat prepared, was how much more knowledge that I gained in that first 2 years, and really learning that entire process of how it works, who to talk to, and more importantly, who not to talk to. If you will, and learning how to say yes, and also learning how to say no, and then standing by your word. I think that is a very, very important part for people to learn when they go to Tallahassee, is that when they make a decision, stay by your decision. Don't flip-flop back and forth, so people can understand where you are. And if you're undecided, stay undecided until such time. But that's okay. Just don't flip-flop, I think, is one of the big things that we learned up there too. Jennifer?
That's a really great answer. What about you, Rep. LaMarca?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of say ditto to Rep. Overdorf. And I came from a background of city government in a very conservative city in Lighthouse Point in Broward County, really the little red dot in the blueberry soup here. And then a county commission where I was the only Republican, but still pushing fiscal responsibility, fiscal issues that were important, going to the legislature and being in the majority, and along the way, and I think Toby and I also shared that, we chaired our local parties. So we had a lot in common. And I think one of the things that, talking about, carrying on with what Toby said, getting to the Florida House and realizing, those are important things. We had some great meetings with leadership on, if you want to commit, make sure you're committed. But there's no harm in not saying yes or no in the beginning before you study the issues. So I had quite a good preparation, getting to this point. But that being said, what surprised me were issues that I'd been working on, coastal management, a beach bill for years before I was elected to the House, from a county commission perspective on funding and things like that. And what surprised me was how easy that bill was to pass. Didn't get any no votes. And then you get to something like, hazing, and a bill on hazing that I got the awesome opportunity to work with both Kathy Mears and President Thrasher at FSU, from an incident that came from a child who died in an accident from Lighthouse Point, from where I live. So, that bill was interesting. And then, we have a lot of other things that we all kind of work on. Some are our ideas, some are given to us, some are forced upon us. But really, give an example, the insight you were able to get from the intercollegiate athlete bill, for example, dealing with something that you didn't think you could deal with at the legislative level as a freshman in the Florida House, and then really realizing, as Toby said, as I went through committees, my no votes were on my side of the aisle. There were very few, but where they were typically SEC members or somebody who had a philosophical difference with the idea of bringing the free market to a college student who happens to play a sport, so they're treated like every other student. And at the end of the day, I'd say the biggest thing that's unfortunately surprised me about the Florida House is we get along well there. We'll have these debates. We'll pass a bill. And folks, maybe they don't understand that I've been on the extreme opposite of these votes back at home, and was the only one voting against a budget because of the overspending and raising taxpayer dollars. But, when you get back to your district, and we're all fighting for our residents, and I think everybody in their heart knows that, as Toby said, we've had 730 people that have, kind of had this message of, if you don't help me, I'm going to be on the street. And so we're all working hard to help people. And then you hear it all politicized with this fallacy of, we need a special session to fix unemployment, when really it's just a special session to deal with Medicaid expansion and all these other issues politically that the other side didn't have the success dealing with during session. So I find, during the campaigns, it just adds fuel to the fire and gives them things to kind of go after folks on. But, Toby and I will get through our elections, but we'll come back a little wiser, I think, on the issue of, you can be cordial to folks without having to believe everything that's said.
Well, that's actually a good segue to a question I want to ask about, specifically about Florida's economy. Right before the pandemic lockdowns kind of took hold, we were at 2.8% unemployment, and that's just remarkable. 60-year low for unemployment in the state and consistently below the national level. Then COVID hits and it goes from there. Looking at it from the 50,000 foot level, as you kind of move into 2021, what are some of the policy goals or ideas that you want to be focusing on kind of between November and March, when session begins, to kind of keep the momentum in the right direction? Because as you had mentioned, it is trending well. It's getting better. So we'll start with Rep. LaMarca on that one. So economically speaking, what are some of the specific policy ideas?
Thanks, Sal. The economy and the fact that everyone can live this opportunity in not just America, but in Florida, being that we're such a free state from a business and regulatory perspective, has always been the reason why I got involved in government past my city level. And it's a reason that, I look at whether somebody's a, ardent conservative or a flaming liberal, they should have a great job and a great career and be able to feed their family, put a roof over their heads, and pick the school, make the decision where their kids go to school. And the economy, the economic issues, especially in an area like mine, if you look at the district, it's 64% of the tourism industry in Broward County, which Greater Fort Lauderdale has we were doing amazing as well as the state. We were at 2.6% unemployment, and we want to get that growth back. I think we need to be responsible about it. We need to start having conversations that were non-starters maybe before COVID. And that would be, how do we deal with marketing Florida's tourism? So whether it's the traditional mechanism of Visit Florida, or how we do it, how we fund it. Also our economic development organizations like the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance and the Palm Beach Business organizations and Beacon Council, we need to think about, what's the mechanism that's going to get that to work. And I'm not necessarily saying one or another. I know leadership has some strong views on it, but I want to get to the table and have a conversation where we might not have had this conversation a year ago. Let's figure out how Florida, we've laid the groundwork, and organizations like JMI and our chamber have laid the groundwork with 6 pillars and with the good work we've done to make sure people know how important it is to come to Florida. But we don't want them moving from Manhattan or the Bronx with their business to set up a hedge fund business or a technology business and bringing their poor voting habits. And I'm not saying one side or the other, just voting for higher taxes and for less freedom. So we want to make sure that as we get these trains moving at higher speed, I think they're on the track and they're moving forward. We need to make sure that we don't leave anybody behind. At the same time, the opportunity shows that Florida is the best place to bring a business, start a business, and grow a family.
And that bears it out. I think there was a statistic recently that last year Florida had more income and population migration than any other state in the United States. They're coming here, but we hope they remember why they left. Rep. Overdorf, what say you on the economy and policy specifically?
Thank you. So as we look at this, I think we're already, as Chip alluded to, we're already in that rebound. You saw in August, we went from 11.1% statewide unemployment. We're down to 7.1% in 1 month. I mean, the jump in that is absolutely amazing. And, I attribute that to, again, the engine is primed. We're ready to go. Things are ready and moving ahead. A strong leadership from the top down has really helped us to recover quickly. I think that once we get, and Chip's right, once we get this tourism rolling again, that you're going to see this really take off one more time to the levels of where we had it before. I mean, Florida is an interesting animal, and it is an animal that's ready to work across the board. One of the areas I think we really do need to focus on, though, is liability protection, specifically for the coronavirus issues. And this is an area that you can have businesses going across the board and doing, quote unquote, all the right things. Somebody comes along and sues them for coronavirus, sues them for something or other that may be out there. And this is an area that we really have to tackle. I know that we're looking at doing that very early in the next coming session. And so I'm looking forward to that and making sure that our businesses are protected when they're taking the proper steps, that we should be going ahead and making sure that they are protected as well. Other areas that I think we need to embrace, we've had I know here at my firm, we do civil engineering and environmental consulting, other things like that, where we did so much of this virtually. And there's a kind of this new emerging task force and new emerging workforce out there that can do a lot of this work virtually. I mean, look, would we really be on a Zoom call this time last year and doing what we're doing right now? And so besides my regret of not buying into Zoom stock, you know, I look at this here, and this is an interesting way that we're able to do work where you know, the world is becoming even more flat, if you will, in that we're having this technology drive us to come together no matter where we are. So embracing that technology. Additionally, finally, looking at skills training continued. I know here in my region, we're really emphasizing skills training. That skilled carpenter is typically over the age of 50. That amazing plumber or electrician, they're also older. So we really have got to get that younger group going into the skills side. And everybody deserves a great job, but everybody doesn't have to go to college and incur those things that are out there and the debt that's there. So, I mean, I know a couple of guys who are welders that are 23 years old that are doing very well with no college debt whatsoever, and they're going to be just doing that increasing. So I would say that by increasing that skill side, and embracing that virtual side, we've already got the engine primed. And I got to tell you, here in Martin, and specifically in St. Lucie County, we are rolling along. I mean, we are so stinking busy right now. A lot of it has to deal with people are fed up with the policies from up north. They're fed up with other states and their policies, the taxation associated with it. They're coming down here. And I got to tell you, there was one of our members who's running in Congress just recently took a poll. His name ID took a little dip. And it was like, well, what's up with that? He's very well known, et cetera. Turns out it's because all the new people that we have in our region here, we've seen a little bit of a blip with his name recognition. So just because of that, we're realizing how many people have come into this region, and we're excited about that. And I think that that will certainly help to prime this engine, get us going again. And I look forward to being a part of that.
Great, thank you.
Well, you both talked about tourism a little bit in that answer, so I want to hone in on that. Not only do your districts sit, as we already talked about, in an area that is really a hot spot for this virus, but it's an area that relies heavily on tourism. As far as priorities go for the 2021 session, how are you kind of taking what's going on related to the tourism industry in your districts into this next session with your priorities? We'll start with Rep. Overdorf and then go to Rep.
Sure. So one of the areas that we're looking at, obviously, is continuing on the success that Chip's had and beach renourishment and those sides. We're also looking at ways that we can spread new opportunities in our airport here locally in St. Lucie County, as well as Palm Beach, and really spreading the word that we're open, we're healthy, and if we can continue to spread those words. And then, frankly, my wife does a lot of traveling in her job, and she has never seen hotels so clean in her life. And it's amazing. She's the kind of person that walks into a hotel, cleans the whole thing herself, and then is able to relax. So right now, she's going off and doing a variety of trips. And she said, Toby, I've never seen it so clean in my life. So if we're able to have that level of service and that level of trust, we're going to see that. So on the legislative side, I'm really looking at continuing some environmental legislation. Water is such an important issue for our future here in Florida. Clean water specifically, for whether it's environmental restoration of our Everglades from the headwaters of Orlando all the way through the Keys. That is something that's going to drive our economy through ecotourism, also through just the water resource being available, whether it's for drinking water, whether it's for agricultural use, or in other ways there. That water's got to be there, and we need to be delivering clean water as well. So the way I look at it is that we have a lot of these above ground storage facilities that are available. There's a lot of willing sellers and or willing lessees. The state doesn't need to be buying more of these areas out there if in fact these are available. So let's utilize that in such a way that we're putting water back underground through filtration, et cetera. And it's really one of the greatest resources that we have here in Florida. And I never want to see us to go into a situation like you have out west, where they're literally having to buy water rights, having to buy those kind of things. And we have such a great opportunity here in Florida, and such a treasure that we have. So that'll be an area that we're looking at. Also looking at continuing our work with teachers and making sure that next level. Last year, we were able to fund our starting teacher pay. We went from 26 all the way up to number 5 in the entire country as far as teacher pay and starting teacher pay. I'm also looking at continuing skills training. Human trafficking is an issue that I'm passionate about defeating and taking it off. And again, we last year at our Super Bowl, you hardly heard about it. Why? Because we were so prepared and we really educated folks about it. We really went after it, versus Atlanta, when 2 years earlier, where there were some major issues and some major arrests. So, I'm really looking forward to this next session, to the opportunities that are available with it. And I know that as far as getting Orlando open again, that's really going to be a trust issue with the people that we have outside of our region. I have folks that are already going back to Disney, back to the various places. They're loving it. If they have to wear a mask, they have to wear a mask there. That's their policy as it is. But the things are going very well from what we're seeing. And I think that the numbers are showing that.
Rep. LaMarca, anything to add to that?
Thanks, Logan. Toby did a great job of what I will call a little less dense version of Broward County. Beautiful beaches where he is. We just have a lot more people visiting here. And what I have noticed, what's interesting, I covered a little bit of, I think, what we need to do, and that's to really figure out how to market our areas to the rest of the country. What people don't understand that may take an adverse position on some of the tourism marketing. And again, there's not a one answer for anything, but when you say that we have beautiful beaches and it's sunny 305 days a year and everyone knows where Fort Lauderdale is or everyone knows where Stewart is, the fact is that's not really the case. If you're from upstate Minnesota or Buffalo and you see red tides in the west coast of Florida, or green algae on the in the Treasure Coast or north of where I am, people think that that's the entire state of Florida. They don't realize how big, diverse, and vast we are. And I just want to tag on. So our tourism industry is going to be tremendously important. I talked to our hoteliers and our local tourism folks, FRLA, and our local organizations on a regular basis. And I told them that, look, for us to understand and really know the issues, I do, Toby does, but, somebody from Lake County or Sumter County may not have the tourism that we do. So they've got to get boots on the ground in Tallahassee if we're going to be seeing people. They've got to make their case. They've got, look at all the issues that have happened based on advocacy. And then we need to say that, folks in those industries need to make themselves available. But the other piece of this that I agree wholeheartedly, and I saw a note in the chat, I am happy to be, I'm very proud to be a conservative in a time serving in this legislature with members that not only believe in our environment, but also work to keep it clean and to continue to grow the positives of what we're doing. Whether it's additional bodies of clean water to work with, dealing with the algal blooms, things like that. I mean, for a governor as principled and conservative as he was coming in, to make a commitment of $2.5 billion in environmental spending for Everglades, water quality, getting rid of these nasty septic tanks in areas that will, pollute the rest of our waters and all those things. I mean, those are issues that hit us right here in Lauderdale by the Sea, for example. We've got a community that was annexed that still has 99 septic tanks that leak into the intracoastal and the Atlantic Ocean on the Barrier Islands. So these are issues that I'm proud to work alongside all the members of the Florida House. At a time, I think it was, I forget who did the poll, but there was a recent poll that was published that showed the response of people's understanding of what side or no side does best with the environment. And the gap is closing. I think it was within 5 or 6 points, D's and R's, which, that should be something that's celebrated by people who care about the state of Florida, our environment, our tourism, and our economy, quite honestly. So, we're all working on these things. I look forward to getting back up there and finding out what the right issue to continue our coastal issues. And look, we have a lot of sea level and coastal flooding issues, whether they're strictly attributed to sea level. We're having, just tremendous king tide issues in Fort Lauderdale, where there's a tremendous amount of wealth and property value. And, we've got to do something about those things. And I've got some ideas. I know Toby will have some ways to kind of move these things forward. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, you mentioned the $2.5 billion in environmental funding, which kind of segues nicely into a question that we got in the chat, which was something I was also going to ask you both, and that is about the budget. Ordinarily, a $90+ billion budget is an involved process. Now, it's generally gone fairly smoothly over the years, and we've, kind of become accustomed to the tradition of the budget. And that's probably all going to change quite a bit for the upcoming year. I mean, I've already heard from the speaker designate and some of the things that he's said publicly about the potential for budget cuts. So you have this kind of the question kind of arises around, you've got budget shortfalls, decreased economic activity, which kind of creates a double whammy. You can have spending cuts, the potential even for tax increases. Talk a little bit about the budget process as you're seeing it for 2021, the good, bad, and ugly. Where do you see the potential for some pain to be inflicted, or how is it looking, and what is the perspective that you're kind of bringing in? And we'll start with Rep. LaMarca and then go to Rep. Overdorf. Thanks,
Sal. Excellent question. And so, I know we're going to have challenges, and as I watch the budget updates on a daily basis, as do you guys. It looks like we're going to be in better shape, as the economy pulls back. But I think this is an opportunity, and I will tell you that as a freshman for 2 years, running back and forth from committees that I'm in to go run and present in the current process of appropriations, where every appropriation gets a hearing and everything gets approved. A couple of questions are asked, and then it either happens or doesn't happen. I mean, I personally think that was an exercise for whatever reason. There was an exercise, I'll say that. That being said, this is an opportunity for us to really kind of recalibrate our priorities. Our budget has grown over the years. I've been going up to Tallahassee since 2005 when I was an advocating city commissioner, and then I was there for the years when we had, the Great Recession, and my friends like Jeff Atwater and Ellen Bogdanoff, when they were representing me, said, hey, we'll talk about anything you want to talk about as long as it's not fiscally related, because the answer is no for that. So the answer may have to be no on some things, especially member projects, things like that. But I think on an overall for the state of Florida, and what really matters is the governor's environmental priorities should move forward. We should find a way to make sure that we can allocate the proper amount for, and if it's used properly, the proper amount for affordable housing like we did this year. And I also believe strongly that we've got to figure out how to market Florida. But I think an opportunity to recalibrate the budget is really a priority issue. And it's going to give us the opportunity to say, all right, well, what should the state be doing? Should the state be doing anything that the county could do or the city could do? Do we want to partner and maybe share those fiscal impacts when maybe we're picking them all up right now? So I think there's really an opportunity to just understand that we need to make sure that we have to have a proper safety net. We have to take care of our workforce as far as making sure that there are projects out there that will keep people working, also a roof over their head. At the same time, the state government's not the answer for everything. So I think it's really just a budget reprioritization, and I'm all for getting back to the table and having that conversation. And certainly, we left the governor with a significant amount of money in reserves and resources for coronavirus, which is exactly why Representative Overdorf and I did not think it was important or didn't think it was critical to go back and do something that would entail a lot of other legislative priorities for someone else. Really, the governor financially, it was handled. And, I think these are also opportunities and times. And I'll end with this. It's time for us, and the way we build beaches or economic projects that require federal, state, and local participation is that everyone has skin in the game. We need to continue, depending what happens after November 3rd, we need to continue to reach out to Washington and ask them for our fair share back. And these are not asks of the federal government that aren't our dollars. These are dollars we sent up there. So we need to make sure that we have an infrastructure bill finally, and that the federal government invests in Florida.
Excellent. Rep. Overdorf.
So, last year we left and there's roughly over $6 billion in reserves, but that's with a B. And so when I look at that, I said, you know, here we're pretty prepared for almost anything with a $6 billion reserve. Well, almost anything. So it's been interesting to look at that, but I then think, what happens if we didn't have that? What happens if we had gone ahead and expanded Medicare, for instance, and really had that continued budget out there that is well beyond what we might be able to afford? Would Florida be in the position that it is of AAA bond ratings continuing? Even in this time, we have this incredible bond rating that Florida is able to gain. So I think you might see us possibly take advantage of that rating for large projects, possibly. There's, I don't see us putting new taxes out there. I really don't. I don't see us adding additional taxes to Florida. I don't think that's how we're going to get new items. But that being said, I will say that I believe that the Wayfair ruling is going to come to rule now within the state of Florida. There are 48 out of the 50 states have taken advantage of the Wayfair online. If you're not familiar with that, this is the online sales tax. Florida is one of 2 states that does not charge sales tax for online sales. And there's a lot more to that I won't get into right now. But last year, Speaker Oliva said, look, Toby, I have enough money. I have enough revenue. Why do I need another $750 million or $1 billion worth of revenue right now? Let's leave that in the hands of other folks. So I think there's some opportunities there when you look at the online sales. And if we had that online sales tax this year during coronavirus, would we also have as much a hole that we're in right now? Would that have benefited us? How many people on this call alone shopped on Amazon, et cetera, during that time when we were in our holes, if you will, during the whole coronavirus issue? So I think that's something that you are going to see come forward on Wayfair, and that's going to be a new source of revenue. And I also agree on appropriations. It's going to be a whole new ballgame. This last year, we were kind of going around and I know when in higher ed, we would always look at, is there skin in the game from whoever's asking this? Is there any kind of investment from the local government, from the institution that's putting this forward? And if there was, then it was, in our minds, it was a higher ability to review that if in fact they were investing their own money as well and not just asking the state to pay for everything. So I think you'll see a lot more of that this year, where there's that initial investment by an outside person or an outside group or a local government, and then they're more likely to get some help from the state at that point in time. But a lot of skin in the game. And so I think the budget process, I think all of us are going to be very surprised with how quickly Florida comes back.
Great. Logan, I saw a good education question in the chat. Do you want to pose that one?
Let's go to a quick round of some fun lightning questions, and then I think Austin is going to do the Q&A from the audience.
Okay.
So we have college football back. It looks a little bit different. I want to ask, and feel free to just chime in, who will win the college national championship this year?
Well, it won't be Florida State because they're pitiful, even though I root for them. But I am an FAU Owl, and if they finally play their first game, we'll be excited. Toby and I will be excited to actually go see them play. You know what? It'll probably be an SEC team that gets to benefit from the name, image, and likeness bill, and probably Florida.
Okay. Rep. Overdorf, should the U.S. Senate confirm a new Supreme Court justice before the election?
Absolutely. 100% yes.
Good. How many wins will the Dolphins have this year?
2 less than the Patriots.
So, hey, Logan, something that the folks on here don't know is I moved here when I was 3, and Toby was a little older, but we both moved from the great state of Massachusetts, and I still root for the Sox, the Celtics, and the Bruins, but not the Patriots. I don't root against them, but I root for America's team. But Toby and I have the other 4 teams we root together on.
All right, I love it. When travel becomes a bit more, I guess, of a thing where you can brag about where you're traveling to. I know a lot of us are still traveling. Where's the first place that you're going to go by yourself or with your family, with your spouse? Where are you going to go?
Either skiing or scouting a wedding place in Europe for my daughter.
Nice.
I was supposed to take my wife, and then it became an entire family trip with her parents to Spain and Italy because her parents are from Cuba, but family's from Spain, and I'm Italian, and that was going to be our 25th wedding anniversary. It was going to be a cruise in northern Italy. You can imagine with coronavirus that did not happen. It probably still won't happen, but we'll probably visit some friends in Wyoming, Montana, and Arizona, as far away from the heat as we can for a while.
Good. I hope you both can take those trips. Last question. On the ballot this year, along with a few other amendments, kind of one of the most important ones, in my opinion, is Amendment 2, and that's going to be an initiative to raise the minimum wage to $15 by 2026. Is this a good idea or a bad idea?
So no. You know what? Rather than say it's a good idea or a bad idea, because first of all, it's a bad idea. We have great companies like JM Family Enterprises, Southeast Toyota, right here in Broward County that, they serve 10 states. They do Toyotas and Lexuses in those 10 states. Colin Brown, who's a great entrepreneur and friend, actually a neighbor of mine, he decided it was time to make sure that everyone at the company from the bottom up made at least $15 an hour. Not only that, but he raised salaried employees commensurate up to a certain level. And that was their decision as a company. I don't think the government is the place to dictate what a company has to pay an employee, because as we say, the minimum wage is just that. It's the floor. It's just like we're getting all these executive orders about coronavirus. These are the floor that the state's putting out. Companies and counties and cities can do differently. And I think it's better left up to the businesses. Let's be honest, and Toby will probably agree or maybe have a different perspective on the nuance of this, but I happen to know that, for example, one of the fast food chains has already rolled out and is ready to implement their automated system where they would have one or two people at a Wendy's, for example. And, do we want to have less people making whatever they're making, or do we want to have more people employed? So that's a decision that those who have advocated for this want to have. If it passes, then, we'll see it happen in real time. But, I don't think it's a good idea.
And Florida would be the first state to put it in the actual Constitution, which is crazy.
Well, you lead to an interesting point there. If I can just, I know it's a lightning round, but if I can just add one thing in there, I don't think that we need to be legislating Florida by our Constitution, period.
Right. Absolutely.
I had the pleasure of speaking to a group on the ballot amendments, and that was probably the biggest takeaway, that Florida, because we have so many ways to amend the Constitution, it becomes in effect a way to legislate policy if you're in an area and you don't like or agree with what the legislature is doing. And that's, I kind of remind them that's why we have elections. But I agree with you completely.
And I would add too on Amendment 2, and Rep. LaMarca was right. If businesses, and many of them want to go to a $15 minimum wage and the model works, that's great. But to have it imposed by government is something completely different. And that's the problem with Amendment 2.
Yep.
Well, we're getting close on time, and I've seen a few questions come in the chat that I know Austin wants to ask, so I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Logan. So you guys already hit on some of Dorothy's questions about water and Andrea's about recession tax. But Andrea put another question in, and we'll go ahead and let her ask real quick before we run out of time.
Sure, thanks. And thanks for being here today. So my question is relating to kind of the educational uncertainty. One kind of cool thing to come out of the pandemic is that education innovation is really on everyone's mind right now. People are turning to homeschooling or private education pods. But one issue there is that there's a bit of an access gap. Not every parent has either the ability to quit their job and homeschool for full time or the funds to hire a private teacher. Some states have discussed ways to expand access by tying education funding to the child. So parents who want to use one of these alternative education options have the money to do that. Is that on the table in Florida? And what do you think about those ideas in terms of expanding educational access?
I think, if I might, great question, Andrea. I think, we're the folks that'll suffer the most, and we work so hard as a state. And I believe I'm a public school kid. My wife's a Catholic school kid, and I believe strongly that, if given the opportunity, the parents will always make the best decision for their children. And it's not necessarily charter, private, tax credit scholarships, but even our magnet schools around Broward County. I mean, I think the number in my district is 47% of the kids go to their home or a zone school throughout K-12. And this opportunity or this crisis has created an opportunity or a terrible situation for those with the least means, and the gap is going to be getting wider as we see. If two parents can't stay home and help get that child on Zoom, like my nephew who's in the 3rd grade at Henderson School at FAU, he has 2 educated parents that help him get on the Zoom call and help him with homework and have a tutor and other things. And where that resource isn't there, it's going to lead to a big gap. And it's our responsibility to have that conversation, I think, in the halls of our capital, to make sure that school choice isn't just, specific buildings. It may be an opportunity to have an in-home teacher, that type of thing. And be honest with you, if you think of some of the teachers that are maybe concerned with going back to a room of 32 or 15 kids, maybe this is a whole new entrepreneurial area where they can go out and kind of become their own boss and be an in-home teacher for, 6 kids in a family or, 12 kids in a pod in a neighborhood. So I think there's opportunity here.
The other thing we're seeing here is that FTEs, or full-time equivalents, for the kids, the schools only get that if the child is in the school. If they're going virtual, as some of the legislation is now, then that goes to virtual school. And so the local municipality, the local school board, does not get those dollars if in fact they've enrolled full-time. Now that had changed on the executive order this past year. But then as this new school year rolled out, that's why you saw such a push to make sure that kids were back in school, is that FTE. So it's going to be unfortunately, a lot of it's going to be a dollars and cents issue more than an educational issue in some parts of it. We have a lot of working parts here: students, teachers, unions, administration. It's not an easy situation or an easy fix. But I think that one of the things that Chip alluded to that I think is my biggest concern in this is that gap. And I just talked to a foster parent the other day who was really concerned because the child had gone back to the parent that they have been with, and the child has not been, quote, in school, if you will, for 7 months because they did not have the means and the parent did not have the desire to have that child in school. So as a result, even though the child wants to learn, they're not able to do so. So the school also, in that in-person school, provides that opportunity for the checks and balances of the health and welfare of that child as well. So we've seen reported child abuse cases plummet in the state of Florida. Why is that? Because the child's not in school and getting that extra level of observation, that extra level of care as well. So I think there's a lot more layers to this question, but I think there's some great opportunities for online learning, and also some great opportunities, though, for how we're going to do that checks and balances in this new virtual world.
Sounds great. We have one question and we'll quickly get to it, and it's for both reps. So last session, the legislature passed some occupational licensing reform. Given the virus currently, do you see the need to build on this reform? Why or why not?
I'll let Toby ponder that first.
So I think it's an area that, we need to do whatever we can to expand business. And if there are impediments to expanding that business, then we need to find ways to make sure that those businesses continue to expand. There needs to be a bit of a registration, if you will, for businesses, but that shouldn't be an obstacle for a business to get started and for a business to continue. So in light of that, if there are ways that we can unhinder, if that's even a word, businesses to get going and get rolling, I'm all for it.
I agree. I think what we need to do is we need to take advantage of the experience, life lessons, experiences, and professional backgrounds of our members. And we've got engineers, we've got scientists, we've got healthcare professionals, we've got people who've spent time in the environmental world like Toby and I had prior as well in the petroleum world. And so when we come across something and say, well, we're going to remove a specific occupational license issue for something really kind of over in the high skilled, maybe even engineering or architectural world, and it doesn't make sense, we need to use our internal database of members to kind of say, well, does this make sense? I certainly agree with that. We should remove as many barriers to entry for someone to get started to do a business in the state of Florida, and that's everything from hair and cosmetology or that type of thing, all the way up through a professional license for an engineer or a contractor.
Sounds great. Well, we're going to end on that question. Certainly enjoyed having everyone join us on our last stop of the My Town, Our State tour. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Remember,
Thank you both very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you both very much.
belong on pizza. What's that?
So we're waiting on Sal too.
Well, he's probably trying to figure out how to stop the world from ever having pineapple pizza again. Now, this is a total. I didn't plan on having pineapple water, but this is pineapples for water, not pizza.
That's funny.
It was the last one in the refrigerator, so.